Hi there, I'm Richard Watts from Culture Reset. In this video today, I'm just going to be talking a little bit about 5 techniques that you might use to help build agreement and influence across your organisation, network or community, enabling you to kind of manifest some of the ideas that you've been developing this year around the ways in which culture needs to reset during this time. In the last video, I was talking about how you might be feeling, how resourced or defeated you might be feeling as you're seeking to create change around you. In this session, I want to think a bit more about how you might influence others to be as committed as you are to that reset agenda. And in the next video, the third video, I'll be talking through our 8-stage process for making change happen in organizations, networks and communities. But for today, I'm talking about these 5 ideas, 5 tactics. Do as I say, I am us. What would it take? Say it their way and connect if you can make it work. So the first is about do and say. In some of the coaching conversations I've been in recently with people who've been through the Culture Reset process, and you're already, of course, resetting culture within their work even before the programme. We've been having conversations about, is it okay for me to have clarified and understood what I can do in my role and deliver that culture reset through new ways of programming, new relationships, new creative interventions, new practice in terms of engaging with audiences and communities and place? Or do I need to also be seeking to have an influence on the organisation and its other leaders and colleagues, depending on where I sit in the organisation? And I'd like to advocate that you do both, that you both do and say, that saying is doing too. And in our organisations, communities and networks, it's really important that we feel self-expressed, that we don't diminish ourselves in the face of opposition or perceived opposition, and that where it feels safe to do so, we recognise that one of the things we can assertively and authentically do is state our truth. And allow that our conversation might change the way that people feel around us. So by being committed to speaking our truth, being committed to being heard, to feeling self-expressed, but not necessarily being committed to like everyone agreeing with us or doing exactly what we would do if we were in their position. But rather than that, seeing that I've got an authentic voice in this conversation, I need to make sure I'm heard alongside others, and that I don't close down that conversation, but I open it up and allow it to include my voice. So that's about doing and saying, delivering directly within my work, but also seeing the role I have as an advocate, as an influencer. And there's something extremely powerful about authentic self-expression, even into contexts where we might expect to receive some resistance. The second perspective is about I am us. So I know that many of us struggle to identify the ways in which we can change culture and shift the consensus within an organisation. And I would encourage us all to orientate to that, frame that around the sense that an organisation is people, and I am one of those people. So if I'm seeking to create change in this organisation, change happens at the speed of the synapse, at the speed of the neuron, by articulating my own truth, by acting authentically and delivering change within my remit. I have an effect on the culture. I have an effect on the norms. I'm shifting the software and the DNA of my organisation simply through that process. So there isn't an organisation and me. There's me as part of an organisation, whether I'm employed, freelance, volunteer. trustee, artist, whatever my relationship with that organization, that network, that community, it is partly me and I am partly it. And one of the ways of making change is by speaking into that space in that way. So I am us. The third perspective I wanted to share was what would it take? So quite often when we're going through a shift in our own perspectives, and we don't see that same shift at that same pace in people around us, perhaps they're peers in our team, perhaps they manage us or we manage them. It's quite easy to fall into kind of wanting to persuade from describing my experience. So if Culture Reset was a powerful experience for you, then you might describe to people how important it was. But that doesn't give them the same experience you had, and it doesn't create, it's unlikely to create a shift in feeling and perceptions for them in hearing about your experience. So then the question is, what would it take? What would it take for their perspective to shift? Who would they need to be exposed to? What would they need to experience? What would they need to do, hear, say, or ask? And in that case, I'm curating an experience for them that might open up possibility rather than trying to persuade them using my story. So that might be about sharing resources that are on the Culture Reset website, or proposing that they listen to the arc of the podcasts. And that might be that we're offering it in the spirit of curiosity. So you might say to people, I think there might be something for us in our organisation or network or community in these resources. I'd really love it if you could find time to have a listen, a watch, or explore. And maybe we could catch up, in a few weeks' time to hear what you heard. So in that way, I'm like thinking about what would it take for someone else to be on a journey, rather than requiring that they hear what I've heard or experience it in the same way. And that takes us to the fourth suggestion, which is about say it their way. So quite often, particularly when a topic's really important to us, whether that's around inclusion and diversity, cultural democracy, new art forms, new practices, where our values are engaged, it can be difficult to speak about that in terms that aren't just true for us, but that speak to other people. So I'd really encourage you to not only share your view in your own authentic language, but take time to listen to the kind of language that people that you're seeking to influence is using. So for instance, it might be for you that a culture reset in your organization or network or community is all about shifting power and increasing agency. And that language will work for a section of the people that you want to convince. But it might be for others that the conversation needs to be perhaps more about clear process, how easy it is to make those changes. Perhaps it's about risk, how important it is that we're identified by communities and audiences as having an interest in their views. Or it might be about funding and potential, like what organizations and partners and funders are looking for today. So we're still making the same case, we're still using the same our same values, but we might be expressing it in language that works for others, say it their way. And finally, I wanted to say that People Make It Work, the organisation I lead, is 20 years old. And our job over those 20 years has been to help cultural organisations change and develop, and increasingly enabling individuals within the cultural sector to develop the skills, perspectives and momentum to make change themselves. And so if you're struggling to make change in your organisation, network or community, get in touch with me, r.watts@peoplemakeitwork.com. Be really happy to have a one-to-one conversation with you, obviously at no cost, in order to unpack what that might take. The next time that we're together, I'll be talking not about do and say, I am us, what would it take, say it their way, but I will be sharing with you our 8 elements of change and thinking about ways that that might align with the work that you're seeking to make happen in your community, network and organisation at the moment. I hope this has been useful, and give me a shout with any feedback. I really look forward to hearing from you, and thanks ever so much for all the work you're doing at this time. Cheers.